Zarak Fatah is a transformational coach, retreat leader, and former serial entrepreneur whose current work centers on one uncomfortable but necessary truth, that the life that so many men are seeking, a world of success, intimacy, freedom, often sits on the other side of unhealed wounds and trauma. In this conversation, we will explore why so many men today are in crisis and why spaces of male vulnerability and accountability matter now more than ever. In his own life, Zarak reflects on growing up as the child of Pakistani immigrants in Canada and the lasting imprint of bullying and shame that left on him. Yet, that was the spur that led him to creating 14 highly successful businesses, including the restaurant Blowfish in Toronto, and to traveling the world and achieving this monumental material success, and why he ultimately walked away from it all. This is At the Podium, and I'm Patrick Huey. Today, we're talking about masculinity, trauma, faith, and the cost of avoidance, and about what it means to find who you are beyond the superficial successes with Zarak Fatah. But before we begin, make sure you like, subscribe, and comment below to support my channel. Zarak, welcome to At the Podium.
Thank you, Patrick. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
It is a real honor to sit and speak with you today. We met a few months ago, and I was so impressed with the work that you were doing. I was like, I have to have him on to talk about his work.
You know, any chance I have to share my mission and what I'm up to in the world, it's always a pleasure because I truly feel I'm living my purpose, and this is what God put me on the earth to do. So excited to have this conversation with you.
Good. Let's get into it. So on your website, on your blog entitled The Truth About Healing and Why It Is the Key to Everything You Want, you wrote, there is a conversation many people, especially men, avoid. It's uncomfortable. It's confronting, but it's necessary because the money you want, the love you're craving, the freedom you dream of, it's all waiting on the other side of your healing. What made you write that?
Just rooted in my own personal journey of chasing success to feel validated, to feel enough, to feel loved, and achieving what most men or women aspire to have. And you can have the car, the clothes, the watches, all the things that many people aspire to own, and you can still feel very empty, realizing that none of those materialistic items are going to fill the void that's within. And this is why often you see people who have gone on the path of spirituality, they let go of all those material possessions that so many people dream of having because they realize that that's not it. That the gold isn't out there. The gold is right inside here, but we have to alchemize the pain. We have to alchemize the challenges that we go through to understand that what's out there is never going to fulfill us. And unfortunately, some people, they never quite get it. But it's for those who are brave enough to ask the question, okay, well, if it's not out there, then is it in here? That is truly the most rewarding path that we can take in this lifetime. Unfortunately, most people have to go down the path of superficial success to reach that goal, only to realize that they're even more disappointed or frustrated than they were when they began it, right? So for me, in my own journey, having created 14 companies and achieved significant success, it was all rooted in my pain from the past and in, me needing to prove myself and show the world who I thought I needed to be to receive that love. And no matter how much I earned or what it was I created, nothing quite gave me that sense of validation that only I could give myself.
Mm-hmm. You use the word alchemize, which I think is very interesting because that alchemy that happens, we all intellectually understand that living in a certain house or driving a certain car is not the key to happiness. And yet we still feverishly, with great hunger, chase those things? What is that thing that makes us not be able just to understand that this ultimately isn't going to get you where you want to go?
Each one of us has our own version of success, and it's all rooted in our core values. If we chase the success that most people are told will make them happy, chances are if you do achieve it, you're not going to be happy. So it's in knowing yourself and knowing what really motivates you, what inspires you, and what fulfills you.
Hmm.
That's your North Star. When you find fulfillment in whatever it is you're doing, the money is a byproduct of you doing something you really love and enjoying it. So I think many people, they're chasing a dream that really isn't even theirs. They've never really taken the time to sit with themselves to ask, what is it that I truly desire for myself? Not what I'm told I'm supposed to get, or what society tells me I need, but what do I really want for myself?
You alluded to this in your answer, this idea of so much of success and how we think about success is predicated on our comparative mind. There's always this calculation of how do I look compared to that person or this person, or my house look to that person. And I think it's that comparative brain, that comparative mind, perhaps, that becomes the trap for us. And it's very seductive, right?
And they say that comparison is the thief of joy. And these days with social media, all you see is everybody's their 1% highlight reel of all the amazing things they're doing. And you look at this and you think, wow, my life sucks. Or, you continuously wanting to chase and search for more. And the truth is you never know what's actually going on in that person's life. You never know if they really are as happily married as they say they are, if they're even able to keep up with their mortgage payments or whatnot, right? Again, it's not comparing what others have, just truly focusing on what lights you up and brings you the most fulfillment and just sticking to that.
So I met you through a mutual friend, and we were talking about this idea of men's retreats and how men need those spaces to come together and move past that comparative brain into that part of their brain that they get to be really who they are and feel what they feel and all the things they were told that we shouldn't be doing as men, part of it. But I was really interested because I lived in California for many years, and I felt like every week there was a men's retreat happening somewhere where these men were going off to the desert or into the redwoods to take themselves out of their environment to be with other men to where they could express what
Mhm.
they can express in their sort of day-to-day existence in their lives with their wives or their husbands or in their careers. And it made me think that men today, young men, old men, middle-aged men, race agnostic, sexuality agnostic, that men today are in crisis. And it's not surprising if you think about it, because when we come out of the womb, we're told, don't feel that, don't say that, don't do that, put that down, pick that up. You're not ever really allowed to be who you truly are. And those signals start coming in very early. Why do you think we are in this state of crisis right now?
I think a lot of men are really confused about what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean for a man to show up confident, integrity, that's safe and reliable? And because men don't understand that within themselves, there is a lack of trust and safety with the feminine. And this is where the masculine feminine energetic dynamic is so off on the planet right now, because many women have had to step into the role of more of the masculine energy, not feeling safe, having to provide, having to also, try to be an equal professionally or financially men. And of course, women can by all means. However, if we go back, you know, 50, 60 years to the masculine feminine dynamic, things were a little bit more traditional. And I know many people are going to have their own beliefs as to what the role of the man or what the role of the woman is. However, if a woman starts to behave more like a man, if he isn't strong in his masculine frame, he may start to act more like a woman. And when that polarity is off, that's what then starts to eat away at the relationships. That's what starts to deteriorate a man's confidence and his ability to really show up in his full power. And I believe that the crisis that a lot of men are going through is they don't actually know what it means to show up as a strong, secure man who can be relied upon, because a lot of men, similar to myself, we didn't grow up with a strong male role model in the house who was able to teach us about our principles, our values, about what does it mean to be honorable? What does it mean to work hard, to provide, to protect? And I think because of this missing element of healthy masculine leadership, you have a lot of lost boys who've grown up to be hurt men who are now, if they're not doing the work, they're going to repeat the pattern by passing that along to their children. And that's why, these retreats, these workshops, these events where men are showing up to learn, it's beautiful because men are allowing themselves to feel, to express, allowing themselves to move low vibrational energy that they've been holding on to, and allowing themselves to heal in a healthy way rather than self-medicating and numbing themselves with drugs or alcohol or porn or whatever vice that they may choose to soothe their pain. So it's an interesting time that we're going through, because 15 years ago, you were considered broken, or something needed to be fixed, if you were going and seeing someone for self-help. But now, thankfully, it's becoming more accepted. Men are realizing, oh, if I want to get to that next level, I need to have a coach, or I need to have a therapist. So I think, we're living through a very unique time where there is a shift that's happening between the masculine and the feminine, and men are, finally starting to do the work to rebalance that dynamic, which is beautiful to see.
Okay, you said a lot of things there, so I think we gotta like break it apart a little bit.
Yeah.
First of all, it is probably not within our social construct right now to talk about truly defined gender roles between men and women.
Uh,
I don't think what you're saying, and if I'm misunderstanding what you're saying, please tell me. I don't think you're saying that there are jobs that women can't do that only men can do. I don't think you're saying that. But what I think you're saying is that within the binary roles of men or gender expressions of men and women, and I don't know if I'm using the right words, there are certain things that men bring into the equation, and there are certain things that bring into the equation that need to be present for there to be balance.
Absolutely.
And that if one of these parts of the equation, for whatever reason, is off, the entire dynamic falls off. And we are living in a moment in time where so much is being compromised on the male side of the equation. It's forcing different behavior patterns in the female side of the equation because they have to live, they have kids, they have mortgages to pay, they have dreams that want to be fulfilled. I think that's what you're saying.
Just look at things from even a masculine and feminine energetic
Oh, yes.
perspective, because it can be same-sex couples, it can be people who are, however they identify as, there are feminine energy qualities, masculine energy qualities, and you'll see that in all relationships, and also in all aspects of nature. That is the harmony, that is a duality, the yin and yang. And if the masculine feminine isn't honored and isn't in symbiosis, then there's going to be an imbalance. And whether it be, if we look at it from context of parents with a young child, there are things that the feminine energy can nurture and provide that creates safety for that young child. And then there are things that the masculine needs to provide for there to be structure, security, safety, protection. When the feminine has to pull from masculine, it takes her out of her feminine role. And you're absolutely right. Men and women can do many of the same jobs together. However, when it comes to parenting and when it comes to the child growing up, feeling safe, because everything happens in the first 6 years of life. And the first 6 years of life is when children's belief systems are developed. And if the child doesn't feel safe at home, then they grow up not knowing what that feels like. And that's why those first 6 years are so important, that the child gets what they need from the feminine and the masculine, so they can grow up understanding what that model looks like. So then they can grow up being balanced, right? Because for me, I grew up without my father very present the first 4 or 5 years. And as a result of that, I could see how I lacked confidence up until my teenage years. I could see how I didn't feel comfortable playing sports with other men or other boys because my father never taught me. And I could see how also later in life, I was pursuing validation from other men because I didn't receive that validation, that confidence from my father growing up. This is where it's really important to understand, for all of the fathers out there watching, that you're the one to teach them about values, about principles, about integrity, about honor. Because if a child doesn't learn that from his father, he's going to learn it out in the streets, or he's going to learn about it on social media. And as we know, there aren't a lot of great role models out there. And again, myself, even though I didn't have a strong, healthy role model father growing up, recognizing my own wounds, recognizing my own patterns, I have chosen to go deep into personal development to understand, like, okay, when I do have children, I'm going to be the father that I never had.
Mm.
I'm going to do my inner work, and I'm going to understand, what did I not get from my father that I wish I would have, because it would have made such a big difference for me.
It's so interesting what you're saying because I was raised by a single mom for many years until she remarried. And then there was a man of the house who was not very present, probably a similar situation to what you're describing. I'm the age he probably was. So I have a lot of sympathy now for where he was in his life in his
Yes.
late 40s, early 50s. So a lot of my judgments have kind of evaporated over time. But I look at my nephews and I look at my nieces who come from homes that are dual parent homes. And boys just need different things than girls.
Yeah.
And girls need different things than boys, and how they're validated by their dad in particular is so fascinating to watch. I spent some time with my brother and his oldest son. We went to the Houston Astros game, and it was amazing to watch him parent his son. At first, I was like, what's going on? Like, I couldn't quite follow the narrative. And then I was like, oh, he's parenting him. He's teaching his son how to be a man in public. He's teaching his son how this is how we behave in public. And it was sit down. You know what I mean? It was like, now's not the time for that. Um, but it was still incredibly loving and generous and kind. And then watching him with his daughter, very different needs that she has from him, right? And there's also age differences and things like that. But I think we get nervous about saying what you're saying because there is a social construct that says that we shouldn't be saying things like that. But I think the older I get, the more I realize that both are necessary and both contribute to the overall success of a person being a human. That being said, it's not happening. We know that it's not right. We understand that it's a crisis. And so why are we still not doing something about it? I mean, and I'm going to be very frank with you. When men couldn't keep erections, we found Viagra and Cialis real quick. But when it's the more opaque parts of ourselves, the parts of ourselves that are maybe even more ancient than we are, all of a sudden, no one's there to be found.
Yeah, I wish it was as easy as you could just take a pill and whatever childhood trauma there is, it could just dissipate. But the truth is that men resist this work because it requires them to look at the darkest parts of themselves that they've really tried to push down and suppress. And because a lot of these experiences happened in the first 6 years of their life, their young minds weren't able to process what is happening, because up until around the age of 6, we are very egocentric in the sense that we think everything in the world is happening for us, it's happening to us, and it's happening because of us. So if our parents are arguing, we automatically think, oh, I did something wrong. That's why they're angry. If dad comes home from work and he's too busy to pick you up and give you a hug, you think, oh, I'm not worthy of dad giving me that hug. Though we create these beliefs at a young age, and then we look to validate those beliefs unconsciously throughout life. So when someone is older and they've got this pattern, whether they don't think they're worthy of love, or whether they don't think they're worthy of finances, or they're overeating, not taking care of their health, you can always connect it back to childhood experiences. And for most people, they're completely unconscious to it because it happened so long ago. And often, if it's very painful, it's even just been pushed away and, forgotten about. And this is why it's a lot of work, and it often gets harder before it gets easier, because you have to really want to do the work, and you have to be really honest with yourself to understand your patterns and be willing to ask the questions and dig deep into the layers to find out, what happened 30, 40, 50 years ago, because the trauma of that experience still lives in the body. So you have to be willing to really look at and understand what created that belief, what have I yet to process, and then be willing to go in on that. And most people, they either don't have the patience, they don't have the courage, or they don't have the time. And there's a quote that says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it'll direct your life and you'll call it fate. So until you're really willing to look and see, okay, why do I keep dating that same person? Or why do I make money, but I always keep spending it? Well, there's a reason why. You just have to be willing to look at it. It's not just life is happening and people keep ripping you off, or that person keeps cheating on you and they keep finding cheaters in your life. It's like, no, you're attracting that. And that's the way, God teaches us. He'll keep sending us the people we need to trigger the wounds, to show us a pattern that's unhealed and unresolved until we finally get the lesson.
It was interesting what you said, because I was watching your work with these men, all different ages,
Mhm.
varying levels of success. As I was watching you, my question was, where are the fathers? Because as you were talking to some of these men, you were like, this is what you have to do. This is how you have to behave to attract a woman who's going to want to marry you.
Mhm.
Some of it was so basic, ABC, sit up straight, eat your peas, don't hit your sister. It made me think, where are the fathers
Mhm.
in all of this?
Yeah, so I'll say that the majority of my coaching is actually with men who are married with multiple kids, because these are the guys who have a lot at stake. They're in their late 30s, mid 40s. They've got successful businesses. They've got 2 or 3 kids at home. And they realize, like, okay, if I keep working and burning myself out, I'm going to have a heart attack. Or if I keep going out on the weekends and having a few too many drinks, it's ultimately going to cost me. So it is intense and it is heavy, but on the other side of that is freedom from the pain from the past. It's freedom from that constant need to grind and hustle or self-medicate in whatever way you are. So yeah, I work with, men who are single, men who are in a relationship. But I really love working with the fathers, because I get to share with them what I didn't receive from my father. And I get to help them to understand the impact of when you don't show up as a solid male role model for your child. I can tell you personally what happens in your life because I've lived that, right? So that's why, going back to the word of alchemy, through my childhood experiences and what I went through, I've been able to alchemize those lessons and experience into the gold that I now share with the men that I support.
What role does pornography play in all of this?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great question. Porn right now is definitely a major addiction and vice for people, for men specifically, because they are distracting themselves. They're getting the dopamine from the porn, and it is creating this fantasy in their head. So when they're getting turned on watching that, and then they're with their wife, it's very hard for them to feel the attraction, to feel the intimacy and the connection. And again, going back to polarity, your partner doesn't feel desired, she doesn't feel safe, she's going to start worrying, not trusting, pulling back, contracting. And porn is a major problem for both men who are married, to help them stay focused and present with their wife, but then also for young men. For myself, I'll say, like, at 13, I learned about sex through porn. And I think a lot of men have also, as a teenager or young man, learned about sex and intimacy through porn. And that's created such a distorted perception of what does it mean to be sexually intimate? What does it mean to have that type of a connection with a woman? Because for many men, they think it's harmless. It's just porn. I'm just going to watch. What they don't understand is it's desensitizing them to sensuality, and it's planting imagery in their mind that is actually distorting their perception of what a healthy sexual relationship should be like. So it is a major issue, and many men struggle with addiction.
Mm. As I was watching your work and reading, it made me question what it says about our world, our culture, who we are, that we keep building these systems around identity. What does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? How do we interact with each other? The masculine versus the feminine. And what we're building just doesn't seem to work for anybody. And so I wonder what we should be building instead from your perspective.
I think it's actually the opposite of building. I think it's taking things apart and going back to the basics, going back to what we know intuitively to be true, to really get back to what does it mean to be a man or a woman or a masculine or a feminine, however you identify. What does it mean to strip away elements that take us out of our humanness? Especially at a time like what we're living through right now with, we are so disconnected to what it actually means to be a human right now that we're not connected to Mother Earth and nature. We're not connected to our soul, our spirit, to God. We're losing our connection to self. And I believe that intuitively, our soul, our higher self always knows what is aligned and what isn't. But we're being bombarded with marketing and advertising all day. We're comparing ourselves to the neighbors. We're living in a dysregulated state. I mean, most people are in fight or flight. They're just trying to survive through the day. Well, it's very hard to quiet and go within and speak to God or speak to your higher self when you're not sleeping well, you're running from meeting to meeting, dealing with traffic, or all the craziness that we deal with in our lives these days. We're so disconnected from ourself and our own truth. And that's why I say that I think right now, what's most important is rather than building and scaling and doing all the things, are you taking time to build your connection to self, to source within you? Yeah, I think we need to get back to basics, and leaving the hyper stimulated environments that we have grown so accustomed to.
I have two thoughts about what you just said. I was reading an article. I can't remember which platform it was on. And it was a legitimate platform. It wasn't like someone's just, you know, page that they're seeing in 13-year-old boys, huge numbers of 13-year-old boys who are just depressed and not knowing which way to go and what it means to be a man anymore. But I think it's very interesting to note that when it goes wrong, it doesn't usually slide into the bases of deep thought and progressive thinking. It usually goes in the complete other direction into bad behavior, into toxic behavior for a lot of people. What you're saying, I agree with, but I also think it's very complicated because a return, I don't ever want to return to a time when women were subject to their husbands.
Hmm.
And I don't mean in the biblical sense. I mean, they were being abused. I don't want to be in a time where two people can't go for a job and they just pick the man because he's the man.
Right.
So I think what you're saying is very nuanced, and I know that you know that, but I also think we have to talk about the nuance because it exists. And oftentimes these things can be taken to extremes to the detriment of other people's lives or value. That's how to say that.
Yeah. And again, going back to what I believe we know to be true just from our own intuitive guidance, that going back to a more basic, simple lifestyle is part of understanding is that men and women play an equal role in creating a beautiful life. There is the yin and yang balance that must exist in everything. The rain and the sunshine needs to coexist in order for there to be life, and the masculine and the feminine coexisting in a way where they understand what each other brings to the relationship, to the home, and coexisting and co-creating in that way in their truest essence without all the distractions and all the things that cause women to not feel safe and step into their masculine, and things that also cause men to be confused and not know who they are, what they're meant to provide. And this is where I feel, as you mentioned, a lot of young boys are lost and confused because they may not have that healthy male role model, and they may not understand what does it mean to be a man? What is my North Star that I'm working towards? Because when people are lost, when they lack direction, there's a quote that says, when man lacks purpose, he seeks pleasure, right? And that's why often men, whether it be a 13-year-old boy who doesn't know what he wants to do with his life, or a 45-year-old man who's made lots of money, he's going to seek pleasure for that dopamine. So whether it be video games, whether it be porn, whether it be gambling, whether it be cheating, whatever it may be, we're going to look to distract ourselves, and having purpose and understanding what are your natural gifts. Why did God put you on this planet? Like, what is there that you have within you that is meant for you to share with the world? And of course, men and women both have their purpose, and they both have a mission to be here and complete during this lifetime.
Yeah.
But it's up to you to ask yourself, what legacy do I want to create during this lifetime?
Mm.
What difference do I want to make? Because when you have something bigger than yourself, you get excited to wake up and do that. Life becomes so much more richer. Yeah.
Your parents immigrated to Canada from Pakistan.
Yes.
Were you born in Pakistan or were you born in
No, I was born in Toronto. Yeah.
Toronto? So, as I was reading your story, I I was like, what was it like for Zarak to be this brown boy whose parents are from Pakistan in Toronto?
So I actually grew up in Scarborough. It's a suburb about 20 minutes outside of Toronto. Well, even though my parents owned their modest little bungalow, I went to school with kids from two different housing projects. And the irony, the racism that I dealt with actually came from kids who were Black, Asian, Greek, Italian. So it wasn't necessarily even the white kids that were calling me names. It was kind of everybody. So
Mm.
I grew up, as I mentioned, quite shy and insecure, not knowing how to play sports. So I was an easy target to get picked on. I went to schools with some pretty rough kids. Like I could say, like by the time we went to high school, I could probably count on two hands young boys who had either killed or been killed before they were even in grade 9. So it's that type of a neighborhood. So I'm sure I probably have some PTSD from those childhood days, but it's definitely something I've worked through. Where actually through some of these men's retreats, where I'm surrounded by 30 men, either as a participant or now as a facilitator, it really helped me to heal my fear of being seen and being with other men and being able to let down my guard and just be open.
Yeah, I was bullied growing up from about 9 or 10 until, I mean, no one bullies me now because I wouldn't stand for it. But I've written about this and I sometimes talk about it. But it's such a horrible experience to be bullied. And I would imagine many people probably feel like they were not fully appreciated for their full humanity growing up at some point. But when you're bullied, it's a whole different ball game. And it literally, and I've never used this word before. And as I was thinking about our conversation, I was like, what is that feeling? And the word that came to me was humiliation.
Yes. Yeah.
Because you are humiliated in the process of being bullied, because that's the point. It's not about like uplifting you and like all of that. It's really about breaking you down to your core, and just the amount of work and mental gymnastics it took to be in all of that mess and come out is really, hey, if you survived bullying, pat yourself on the back because it didn't break you. But it's a dispositive factor of your life, I think. I think you won't ever forget that. And I wonder for you how that bullying actually shaped you.
Yeah. So I'm actually grateful for my bullying. Like I wouldn't change it, because me being bullied as a young child helped me to develop certain characteristics and certain qualities that played a significant role in my success. Because I wasn't a fighter, I had to learn how to talk. And I had to learn how to talk, and I had to learn how to work my way into different circles without being the jock. Didn't know how to play sports. I wasn't necessarily the most secure. And I also became hyper vigilant to really understand people and to be able to read emotions, to know how to like fit in. It's no surprise that the kid that got bullied and didn't get picked for any school sports teams then grows up to own the hottest nightclub or the trendiest restaurant. Like at some point in time in that formative stage in my life, I decided I'm going to show you how cool I could be. I'm going to show you I don't need you. And you take a look at most successful men who've done really, really well. They've been through something very traumatic in their childhood where somewhere in their mind, unconsciously, they said, yeah, you watch me. I'm going to show you. Like Elon Musk was terribly bullied as a young child. You develop this desire to prove yourself, right? Now, this is the thing. The demons that drive you will destroy you unless you put them on a leash.
Ooh.
So what I realized was my need to prove myself. I'm going to do it on my own. Watch me. You'll only go so far being a one-man show. I realized that as much as my ambition and need to prove myself served me, it was also taking away what I wanted the most, which is connection and friendship and support, true connection. I wouldn't change the bullying and what I went through, because if I had maybe grown up very popular and grown up being the school football captain or whatever, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation right now, you know? And again, going back to this topic of alchemy, when you can have gratitude for the experiences in life that maybe you felt guilt or shame and anger towards, when you can see how those situations, even though they sucked at the time and you were really afraid or scared, if you can go back and revisit that experience and understand how that experience shaped you and molded you and helped you to become the amazing human that you are now, you can have compassion, you can have forgiveness, you could have even love for those people that hurt you. Because I can remember each one of those little bastards who tormented me when I was young growing up. And I've done meditations before where I just send them love, I send them gratitude, and just thank them for what they did, because it's exactly what I needed for me to become the man I am today.
Yeah, my problem wasn't that I wasn't popular, but they made me pay for it because
Okay.
I was just like this odd duck to a certain degree. Like I was smart, so I knew how to make the systems work to my advantage, right?
Okay.
Um, but I was a walking contradiction. I was like the first guy cheerleader at my like it was a
Oh,
lot going on.
yeah.
And then
Mhm.
people were like, "What?" Like here in Texas and like the country, yeah, it was
Yeah.
very confusing. Um, but I do agree with you. I do think that those things when I went to Yale, we used to always say, I don't know if they say this anymore. I hope they do because it's true. Is that you're being forged in the fire, and I think
Mm.
these things makes you who you are today. It shapes the narrative in a real way. You said that you dropped out of high school at 17.
Well, it was actually, I got kicked out of my third high school.
You got
So
kicked out
that,
of the
yeah. So by the time I got kicked out of my third high school, I was 17 years old. I'm like, okay, like in baseball, three strikes, you're out. Maybe this school thing isn't quite for me. So that's
yeah.
when I just kind of hit the real world and started working.
And so now you're the 17-year-old kid hustling to make it happen in your life.
Yeah, well, I mean, whether it be I was selling men's suits at the mall or working in a restaurant, these were all very basic jobs that I had just to make some money and get by. But it wasn't until I was 18 years old that I was in a nightclub and I was just there hanging out, dancing, and I got offered a job. So that
Mm.
just sort of happened, and that was my doorway in.
You wrote, at the age of 21, the inevitable finally happened. My parents split after years of fighting. Within months, my dad fell behind on the mortgage and the bank repossessed our family home. We all went our separate ways and I was on my own. What was that like?
Yeah, when the banks took our house, I knew that, okay, there's no one in the world that is going to give me what I need now, and it's on me. And my parents, because they were very hardworking, they instilled that work ethic into my brother and I. So I like working. I'm very committed. So for me, it was okay. I know that I can have the life I want, and I'm going to have to figure it out on my own. By that time, I was already working in nightlife, and I had a lot of connections and knew that it was something that I just naturally thrived in that environment. So for me, I never doubted whether or not I was going to be able to make it. I just knew that when you have passion for something and it fills you up, even though it was only, nightlife, for me, it's where I really felt that I belonged. So for me, going to work, I was excited. It was fun. I got to hang out with great people and I thrived in that environment. And one opportunity just led to the next, to the next, to the next. And I've always been very entrepreneurial. So having that entrepreneurial mindset created a lot of opportunities for me. And I just trusted it and I just went with it. And I'll say that because I didn't have the guidance from my father, because I did leave high school at 17, I didn't know I wasn't supposed to be doing the things I was doing. I would just go for it. I would just try it. I would just take that chance because I didn't have the fear of someone telling me what I should or shouldn't do. I've grown up trusting my intuition and just going with what feels aligned and right for me. And being on your own at 21, out there bartending, making whatever money you can to get by could be scary. But for me, it was just an adventure and what turned out to be a stepping stone into something much bigger.
How did Blowfish enter your life?
Yeah. So I had been promoting nightclubs in the Toronto entertainment district for a few years and had built up a network and saved a bit of money. And someone had approached me at one of my events and we got to know each other a little bit. And he asked me, what's next for you? And, as a promoter, you always want to open like your own nightclub one day. And because I had spent time in Miami and yeah, I've been to Montreal and go to New York. They had restaurants that didn't just serve food. There was a DJ, there was mixology, there was an ambiance. It was a restaurant that turned into a vibe after. And in 2003, Toronto did not have that. So
Yeah.
when this person approached me, he had shared that they were working on a new restaurant concept and told me a bit about what they had planned. And I said, well, what if we add a DJ and we have music programming and we create something like you'd see in Miami here in Toronto? And we started brainstorming and sharing ideas. And that then became the concept of Blowfish. And in 2003, it was very innovative because no restaurants had DJs at that time. No restaurants had dynamic lighting that turned the place from a dining room into a lounge. And it was a hit right out the gates. And it allowed me to really express myself creatively based on what I'd seen from traveling the world at all these other hot spots. So it was, it was a special place.
As this is all happening, you're opening a bottle service room, you're opening a spa, celebrities like you and Drake. And this is what you wrote. You said your life was fancy cars, big watches, hot girls, and that you were blowing money to buy things you didn't need to impress people you didn't like, looping in your relationships and being irresponsible with money and chasing things that didn't bring you fulfillment.
Mm-hmm.
So as all this is going on, all this, the money, the girls, the cars, the access, inside it's not right for you.
A part of me was really loving it because it was a validation. It was the external success, but something felt misaligned inside. And it was a young 8-year-old boy who just wanted to feel loved, just wanted to feel cool, just wanted to be picked to be on the soccer team. That little boy didn't care about the watches, the cars, the girls. He just wanted to feel enough. All of those other things were just a distraction. As I mentioned before, most people don't have their awakening until they actually reach a certain level of success and they have all the things that they were told are going to make them happy and fulfilled. And they get there and they're like, wait a minute, where's my happiness? I thought it was supposed to be here at the top of this mountain. So for me, there was a knowing within that what I was chasing wasn't going to fulfill me. And it wasn't until I turned 40 that I really took a hard look at where am I going now in my life? Like I've gotten to this place, but so many things that I was aspiring to have aren't here. And for some people, their awakening happens when their doctor calls them up and tells them, I have some bad news for you, or their wife leaves. For me, my awakening came from realization at 40 that I just wasn't where I thought I'd be and that I was caught in a loop, making money, spending money, doing things that necessarily weren't really fulfilling me. And I chose to disrupt that. And I'm blessed that thankfully my awakening didn't come as a really hard slap from the universe. It was just my own realization that if I didn't make changes, I was going to wake up 10 years later, I'd be that creepy 50-year-old guy in a nightclub doing the same thing. And I was not going to go down that path.
Mm-mm. You reach a point in this transitional phase when you realize that it's not working for you. You said you left $1 million on the table and you walked out because you guys were in the middle of redoing Blowfish or repositioning.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
What made you make that decision to say it's not enough that I do the work and stay in this world that I'm in? What made you say it had to be a clean break?
So a lot of people would tell me I was so courageous to walk away from a 25-year career and all the success and notoriety that I had in Toronto. but it wasn't courage. It was actually discovering my purpose. It was realizing that my story, my struggles, and all the lessons I had learned through my own healing journey could now help people overcome what they were going through and find their purpose. And it was during my first retreat that I hosted in Costa Rica in 2018 that I realized this idea I had to bring 10 people to the jungle and teach them about breath work and, about their energy and about mindfulness, to see it actually work and to see 10 people arrive dysregulated and stressed and disconnected to going home, loving, connected, bonded, and healing. For me, I just knew like, wow, this is what I want to do. This lights me up. This is a feeling that I haven't felt in a long time. I wanted to do it again. And again, going back to what I'd shared, growing up, not having a lot of guidance, just trusting my intuition, something told me in that moment, if you let go of the restaurant, if you walk away from the money, you are going to have a fresh start. And with that fresh start, you can do anything you want.
Mm.
And I didn't know I was going to be a coach. I did not know I was going to go down this path. I just knew that I want to help people. I want to travel. I want to work when I want, where I want, with who I want. And these retreats sound like they're going to be a lot of fun.
What were your parents thinking when all of a sudden their son
Mhm.
is blowing up in Toronto? Do you have a good relationship with your parents?
So I have a much better relationship with my parents now than I did during that time where I was making a lot of money, because I was so busy and consumed with that I didn't really have time to see them. And there was also resentment. There was also unresolved emotions and experiences from the past that I hadn't really dealt with them yet. So I would see my parents periodically, but it wasn't until I started to really do the deep inner work and understand that the patterns that are looping in my life all come down to my childhood. So I started to ask my mom, what was it like for her growing up? I started to finally get to know who my mom was and learn about her. And I discovered so much about her childhood and her history, as well as with my father, that, we can grow up and we can have a lot of judgment and resentment and frustration towards our parents for what they did or didn't do. But when you can have love and compassion and understanding and really get in their world, that's a deeply healing process that I invite anybody who's listening or watching this to take. When I changed my perspective and my energy towards them, my mom, she softened. My father became more expressive. Like they changed without me doing anything to them, more so just by way of me shifting my perspective around who they are.
When you were making all of these changes, and what did you have to grieve and let go of to create the space to even walk away from it?
When you start down the spiritual path, you need to know that you're going to lose anyone who does not vibrate at that same level. And
Mhm.
a lot of those friends are resistant to seeing your growth, because you growing, you shining your light illuminates their darkness. So letting go of friends that I'd known for 10, 20, 30 years, letting go of some of the places we used to go, things we used to do. You can't heal in the environment where you got sick. And for me, I had a group of friends who were all highly successful, but I didn't like how they were treating their wives. I didn't like that they were so obsessed with money. When you decide to shift your identity, there's a lot that you need to let go of, because all those elements will pull you back in, whether it be friends, whether it be places you like to go and travel, whether it be things you spend money on. You have to just ask yourself, even though this is familiar and comfortable, is it aligned with the direction that I want to go? And that could be painful, because you're letting go of things that were once really, really important to you for a long time. And there's a stage between who you were and who you're becoming, and it can be really uncomfortable. It's like when the caterpillar goes into the chrysalis, right? When it goes into that stage where it just melts and dissolves. I don't think it actually knows that it's going to emerge as beautiful butterfly with these gorgeous wings. It just knows like, I'm going through something right now. I'm just a pile of mush.
Yeah.
I don't know what's on the other side of this, but I'm just going to trust the process and just keep believing that on the other side of it, you're going to have beautiful wings and fly off to whichever amazing destination you choose.
I wonder, in your work and what you're doing, what does it mean to be a man, and what does real manhood look like from your perspective?
I think first and foremost, it means to be grounded in your identity, your confidence, in your beliefs, in knowing what you stand for, and really embodying those values that define who you are unapologetically. A man's role is to be a provider, to be a protector. You walk through life with a level of confidence. And when a man walks in a room and he can hold his head high, shoulders back, and he knows, like, I am who I say I am, and I am a man who honors himself and those he cares about, you can feel that presence. You can really, it's noticeable. And I think as men, it's very important that we know who we are, what we stand for, and we work to be a better version of ourselves every day, whatever that may look like.
Who are the men who've showed up for you?
I didn't have anybody that really taught me what it was like to be a man. Like, it wasn't until probably my 30s and even early 40s that I actually started to have mentors and hang out with men that I really admired. Like, it was really me having to figure out on my own. Just going back to what we originally talked about at the beginning of this conversation, that is the crisis that men are going through. They don't have healthy masculine role models to show them what the world needs from them right now. Yeah.
On this season of the show, we're talking about the legacies that people leave. And I wonder for you, what is that? Whatever that means for you.
Sure. I'm proud to say that I am creating my legacy right now in this moment on a day-to-day basis. I've often said that if I walked outside and got hit by a bus tomorrow, I can go to heaven saying my life meant something. I can honestly say that the work that I'm doing with my clients, their children are going to be different humans because of the work that me and their father have done together. They are showing up for their children and their partners in a way that they probably never would have had they not chosen to do this work. My legacy will live on in the children of my clients. And I know that I will have made a mark that will be remembered.
Zarak, thank you so much for your time today. And so much.
Thank you, Patrick. It's my pleasure. I really enjoyed chatting with you and sharing a bit about my journey. I hope your viewers enjoyed learning a bit about me and what I do. And just thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. I'm sure they will. Thank you so much. And to those of you who are watching or listening, remember, we all have a voice. We all will leave a legacy. Live and choose wisely. Bye, everyone. And thank you, Zarak.
Thank you.